Thank you, Robin. Members of Synod, we turn our attention now to the General Secretary's report, which is in the report section E11, and so that report will obviously be brought to us by the General Secretary. Thank you.
Thank you, Moderator. Mark Lawrence, General Secretary. I'm delighted to present the report of the General Secretary, E11, to this Synod meeting. A report of the General Secretary will always include reference to the wider Synod staff because so much of what the General Secretary does is resourced by the Synod staff team as a whole. Together we strive to serve God and God's mission in Christ across this Synod. And as we seek to do that, we respond to the Synod's responsibilities to resource the various governance, oversight and other committees, and to respond to the Synod's strategic framework and future directions for strategy. As the General Secretary, I have the privilege to offer leadership and guidance for all these elements of the work of the staff across the Synod. And also, as the General Secretary, I am honoured and delighted to engage with dedicated and skilled members of the Church from across the life of the Church who are exercising their discipleship by serving the Synod in various ways. And I have the honour as well to share and explore with the Synod's institutions as they continue to undertake the strategic work of the Synod. My work and the work of the whole Synod staff continues to be in the midst of broad and rapid social change. And this broad and rapid social change is impacting on our communal discipleship, on our personal discipleship, and on the Church's worship, witness and service in a variety of ways. And it is in this mission context, both within and beyond the Church, that Synod Ministries and Operations and I offer to exercise our expertise, our professionalism across the three units of the Synod in response to the Church's commitment to be at mission. And in this report as well, I want to place on record on behalf of the senior leadership team our deep and abiding appreciation for all Synod staff for their commitment, flexibility and innovation in continuing to serve the wider Church in an ongoing time, an ongoing period in the Church's life of wonderful opportunities, a series of challenges, and an opportunity to work together as councils of the Church to respond to the call we have on our lives. I continue to experience the call of being General Secretary as enriching and engaging. I continue to feel honoured to be trusted to serve in this role. And to undertake this role to the extent that I can, I am deeply appreciative of the support and very positive relationships I have with many people and communities across the Church, including you, Moderator, the members of the Standing Committee, the chairs, all of the committee members, but particularly the chairs of the Ministry of Mission and the Property and Operations Committees. The Synod's senior leadership team and the staff in general, an ongoing and positive relationship with the CEOs and board chairs of our institutions, and particularly and especially the staff of the Office of the General Secretary, especially Isabel Thomas Dobson, Associate General Secretary, staying on for a bit longer than planned. Thank you, Isabel. Catherine D'Alessandro, who was the Executive Assistant to the General Secretary until April this year, and now, as she introduced this morning, is the Manager of Administration and Secretariat Governance, and in her spare time, she organises the Synod meeting. To Claire Boyd-McRae, who up until April this year is the Executive Secretary for Governance. She retired in April this year. And to my new Executive Assistant since April this year, Carice Fraser, who's over there in the corner taking the minutes. You'll see Carice around the place. Thank you, Carice. It's great to have you as part of the team. Thank you, Moderator. I offer my report to the Synod.
Thank you, General Secretary. There is some opportunity for questions and comments about the report. If you have a question, you hold up a yellow card and there are microphones. There's one over there and one over there. That one's got a little red thing on it and that one's got a black thing on it. So I'm probably going to refer to them as the red and black microphones just to make it easy. I'll call that one the red one just to be helpful. All right, doesn't look like there. Oh, yes, please come to a microphone. If you've got a question, bring it to the microphone. And I'm going to refrain from, or as best I can, I'm going to try to refrain from naming people because I don't know everybody in the room. And so I'm going to ask, you need to introduce yourself. So at the black microphone. Keep talking. Yep, just wait. Tell a story for a minute or two and yeah, here we go. That's right. 5 more seconds.
Still can't hear you, Ken. That's better.
Ken Tabart, I live on Wurundjeri land. Mark, thank you for your report and as you know, I appreciate the work that you've done and the way you have done it so well and that you're a magician over all things and also keep a crystal ball. So seeing the church as you do and have for a long time, can you offer us some insight into the future through your crystal ball? I was interested in seeing that in the placements report there are 32 retirements and wondered whether that was a signal of something, and considering what we've already heard about the possibility of having too many congregations and doing things differently, is there a word for the church that you see in your role as CEO, oversight and crystal ball gazer?
Thanks, Ken. Thanks, Ken. I don't think that's in my ministry description, fortunately. I'm not going to offer a crystal ball gaze of what the future might be, except to remind Synod members that in my report I've talked about some looking ahead elements as we work through the ongoing engagement with Act 2 and as we work through the Faithful Futures report and as a whole lot of other work goes on in the life of the church. What I can say is that as we continue to respond personally and as a community to the good news that there can be a group of people who belong to Christ who want to share in worship, witness and service, which speaks to the culture of which we're a part, then that means that we are called to continue on a pilgrimage journey. And that's about looking to the future and not doing things that might be comfortable for ourselves, but to use the incredible theological, missional and material resources that we have inherited as a church so that we can continue to share the way of being church that the Uniting Church has evolved to within the community that we're a part of. So that'll be some tough choices, that'll be some faithful responses, and that'll be all of us listening and sharing with each other as we take the steps that are needed. The numbers of ministers and the number of congregations have to be addressed, and I would suggest the best way to address it is thinking about what our ministry and missional call is and responding to that together for the sake of continuing to share the good news of Jesus Christ.
Thank you, General Secretary. That brings that report to the conclusion. You'll know that we received all reports earlier on this morning, so we don't have to go through that process every time. So as the General Secretary resumes the chair here, let me introduce Alison Overeem and Ayla Williams, if you would like to come forward for the UAICC report. So Alison is the manager, UAICC Leprena, and Ayla is the Community and Cultural Resource Officer for the UAICC Leprena, and they're going to present this report. Thank you. Just a word of note to anyone who might be coming to present. You can step up there, but it's a fairly big step, and there's a ramp on that end which is less steppy.
You all look so scared, it's going to be fine. Got one here. Thank you, everybody. So firstly, I'd like to honour and pay respects to the traditional owners of the country that we gather on, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nations, and honour and pay respects to the lands that we have the privilege to be on from Lutruwita, Tasmania. We will accept our report as read, because we know that's what everybody's been doing in the last couple of months, is reading reports. So that we'll take that as read. But as First Peoples, we're storytellers, so it's important that we stand up here and share some stories with you. As mentioned, I'm Alison Overeem. I'm actually the manager of the Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress in Tasmania. So I welcome all Nita and Nointa, all brothers and sisters, to this gathering and to some small sharing of the work of the Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress on the lands now called Tasmania. I acknowledge and pay respects to other First Peoples who are gathered here today, and honour and respect your ancestors, your stories, your struggle and your survival. I also pay respects to elders past and present and warriors in the now. I've just prepared one earlier to bring to you to Synod. We're not as funny as everybody thinks we are, but I honour and pay respects to our ancestors from Lutruwita, Tasmania. Both Ayla and I are proud Palabal women from the southeast nations of Tasmania, leaning in and on the guidance of Fanny Cochrane-Smith. I'd also like to acknowledge my fellow Indigenous brothers and sisters from other places that across the world who have come to live in Australia. And I really want to honour and pay respects for that friendship in the Cold community, the Pacific community, that really embraces us First Peoples. And I just like to say you all know who you are. That's no, two. There you go. I've got to. I just mentioned the artwork here, and we don't just call it artwork. For us, it's about a living story that's done through an art form. And I'd like to credit the the other third member of our very small team, Grace Williams, who has produced this artwork, which really is around what the whole Synod theme is about, belonging to the day, belonging to each other, and belonging to the oneness of God. And for us, it also symbolises who Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress is in Tasmania. We don't sit in silo, we sit with our other Uniting Aboriginal Islander Christian Congress brothers and sisters across the nation. So I honour and pay respects to them as well. We're heavily involved in strong mission and ministry, and that's grown so much in the last couple of years. We are committed to intentional community gatherings, and the partnerships and networks that we have, you'll find in the report, have increased 150%. This is just a small snip of a good news story. So through UAICC Tasmania, we were able to source our own funds and work closely with the Synod office as well to see how we could support the Tasmanian Elders Council of Tasmania. It's based in the north. So for us, this has been a great example of how we gift back to our own community and work together. And the elders are very grateful, and we'd like to thank Sam Nichols for all his work in that as well. Connecting generations, we run men and women's groups and family groups. We're committed to cultural preservation, spiritual connection and wellbeing, community engagement and partnerships. And this is a photo of the elders. They got the bus, and the next day they drove it down to say thank you. And that's about living outside the building. I just want everybody to know that Laprena UAICC Tasmania isn't a little building in Glenorchy. It's something that speaks and leans out to the whole of the Aboriginal community and wider community, both in Tasmania, across Australia and beyond Australia. And I'd like to hand the rest of the presentation to Ayla Williams.
Thank you, Alison. So in that above photo, you'll see Reverend Michael Duke, Alison here on my left, and Denise Savage. Denise is here. Where are you? Hello. So at the moment, we're in conversations with a few different parts of the church about actually having a very own intentional community. So where Congress and the Uniting Church will actually be on the same site. We'll share resources and pull together what we can. And that for us, in essence, is living out the covenant, not just talking about it, because we all know that we can talk about it till the hills, I think. But we all came together. It's been a process over many years now, but it's starting to come to fruition in some very real and tangible ways, which is fantastic. But it will be the first of its kind. So watch this space, because when it's off the ground, it truly, I believe, will be a game changer and a model of practice that the remainder of the church can follow. Now, this is obviously, this is a pretty heavy topic, this one. And we were very deliberate with calling it a failure, the referendum, because to us it is. And I've got to sort of preface this by saying that Congress has, and I have no doubt Congresses across the rest of Australia have been inundated with the question of what to do next. And to be honest, we haven't really, I don't think we know yet. We're not there. We're sitting in a space of a lot of disappointment, frustration, and unfortunately it's sort of, I don't know, it reaffirmed for us, sadly, that this country is very much still a racist country. And I've got to call it that, because that's exactly what it is. To not pass this referendum was devastating for communities across the country. But to put a bit of a positive spin on it, because you've got to see the silver lining, I think moving forward we need to think about how we can use and lean on the resources of the Uniting Church that are already there, i.e. the covenant, to move forward, to have open dialogue and to learn. We need to have open dialogue for this to happen. And we need to be honest when we need to sit with the pain, because there's a lot of pain in this area at the moment. But like most things, there's a positive and a negative, but we really can capitalise on this opportunity for reflection and learning about where to go next. But we need to listen to the First Peoples within the church and in this country. Now, we just wanted to put a bit of context about how our work actually relates to the passage that is on everything for this meeting. And obviously I've put a few dot points up there, but in a cultural and spiritual sense, we relate to Creator. We don't usually use the language of God where we are, because it's not relevant for us. But we're just called to be and embrace the light of what is good. And we encompass that in all that we do. And we don't just live it out at work, we live it out in our personal lives as well, because we need to be authentic in that journey. And we work in a way that is very different, I think, from a conventional sense point of view. We don't run services, not in the conventional sense, but we have a massive faith community where we are. But what it looks like for us is sitting around the campfire, yarning up, to be honest, usually over a coffee. But that's what works best for us. But yeah, I think that's it from us. But yeah, thanks.
We have the opportunity for questions or comments to the report, so I'll invite anyone who would like to take that up to wave a yellow card and make your way to a microphone, please. Go ahead.
Robert Lees, representing North East Victoria. I live in the Yorta country. I thought it was important for me to wear my T-shirt this afternoon to show my support for the Indigenous and Torres Strait Islander people who, like all of us, who supported the campaign, are still grieving immensely, and that will take some time. I'm comforted by the thought that maybe we thought the referendum was the end of the journey. No, it's dawning on me that we're really only a little bit into the journey of building a better community and a better society across Australia. If I can liken it to a football match, we've played the first quarter, we've been outscored, and for the moment the other team is leading, but we've been kicking against the wind, and our time will come when we will make significant progress towards the goals that we've set for ourselves as a country and as a church. Thank you. So keep the faith.
Thank you, and keep wearing that T-shirt, brother.
And another question coming forward.
Moderator Fee Morrison from Panalipana country on Latarita, Presbytery of Tasmania. It's not a question, I just want to say thank you for your vulnerability, for sharing from your tequila, your heart. I know what a journey this last 12 months have been, especially in Tasmania, with divisiveness within our Indigenous community, but also the wider community. And I want to thank you for your vulnerability, for being a leader, not just within our church and our Congress, but also within the wider community, not just for Indigenous issues, but also for issues of equality, justice and inclusivity of all people. And so thank you, both of you, and Grace, who's not here today.
Thank you, Fee. We paid Fee to say that. Is our time up?
Your time's not up, but it sounds like we've come to the conclusion of your report, so that's fine. Thank you very much. Oh, did you want to say more? Sorry, did I misinterpret?
I always want to say more, David.
Go ahead, you do have more time.
Don't we have a voice in this synod? Amen. You know I cause trouble, all of you. I just want to acknowledge the support of the Uniting Church during the Yes campaign, especially our synod, but at an assembly level as well. The strength and solidarity through the vigil we did before the day of the referendum really was the strength that got me through. And we were talking before about belonging. Yes, it was a disappointing outcome, but it was that time and that space that made me realise that this is the church that I want to belong to. This is the church that wants to say yes. And we've been humbled, and for those in Tassie, I was part of leading 6,000 people through the streets of Nipaluna, of Hobart. With the Yes campaign, I received lots of lateral violence from my own community, but it was the arm of strength, really, and I probably wouldn't have said this 5 years ago, of the Uniting Church and my own people who supported me, that gave me the strength to do it. And I just want to acknowledge the amazing team that we have. There's 2.5 of us. Well, not that we're halves or anything like that. We are a small team, but our outcomes are amazing. And this is Ayla's first synod meeting. I remember mine. I wasn't coming back again. And I just want to say how proud I am of Ayla in her work, in the work she does with and for Congress Tas, with the Assembly, with the National UAICC, and for having the courage to get up here on this stage today and give a voice from the younger people. So, well done, Ayla. Not that I'm not young, I'm still in the young group. Thanks for listening. Please come and join us as we weave together the oneness in Lutruwita, and I think we need to be looking towards next year with the 30th anniversary of the Covenant to ask ourselves, what does this look like in the next 30 years? Nairi Nina Tu, stay deadly. Thank you.
Thank you, Alison and Ayla. We turn from the UAICC Tasmania report to the UAICC Victoria report. So those who are presenting, if you could come forward, please. We have the Reverend Will Pickett and Reverend Greg Crow from the UAICC Victoria Oversight Committee, and they are going to present the report, which you have distributed.
I noticed this year we're taking on that other posture of Christ, which is we don't consider ourselves, even though we are one with those up there, we consider ourselves a little lower than those up there. Whereas last year we were on equal footing, but we consider ourselves a little lower than...
Okay, Greg Crow, just to be clear, the reason why we have done this is about accessibility, but yes, it's difficult to win either way. Thank you.
We knew there was a reason. Moderator, members of Synod, Greg Crow, Oversight Committee Chair. I acknowledge the Wurundjeri Woiwurrung people of the Kulin Nations, who are the ancient and continuing custodians of this land. And I pay my respects to all First Persons here today, members of the UAICC, my brother Will, and members of UAICC Tasmania, sisters Alison and Ayla, and great report, feeling really positive about what you're doing. And I want to acknowledge the importance of the National Congress and any other First Nations people who are members of this Synod meeting here. I remember many synods ago, Ken Sumner standing up to acknowledge country, and he challenged us and said, what does it mean for you to acknowledge country? And I am invited whenever we hear a welcome to country and whenever we do an acknowledgement of country, I am invited as a white person to consider who am I in this acknowledging. I'm invited to ask the question, what is my story and ancestral narrative that I bring to this country? What does it mean for me to share who I am with the First Peoples of this country in the same way that we continue to ask them to tell us who they are? Yes, as a white man, I have a colonial ancestry, not specifically associated with government and empire, and yet still attached to that colonial story that through governments of my ancestors, it is a story of dispossession and a Western ideology of assimilation of culture and custom, a story of empire and power and dominion that we saw played out recently in the referendum. And just as an aside, as I was listening to the Bible study, I thought about eschatology and the call to be people of the day who confront the eschatological evils of the day. And we've been called in the voice to Makarrata to have an outcome that comes through struggle, and perhaps that's what it means for us to be a people of the day. But there's another narrative that I need to dive deeper into, that I have a country and a culture that I carry in me from the earliest days of human life on this earth, that I too am connected to space and place and story, culture and law. So I'm always grateful to my brothers and sisters in the Congress who remind me of this and challenge and call me to connect with my own deep ancient story as part of who I am. And then we might be able to sit together on country to listen, to know, and to understand. But it starts with me understanding whiteness and my own narrative. Members of Synod, since 2018, there's been many conversations, meetings, planning days, different people gathering together to reflect on the future of Congress Victoria. It's been a hiatus of sorts for us in Congress, and we've been in an in-between space. Since the retirement of Uncle Vince, Congress Victoria has attempted to navigate its path. But as with all changes after long-term charismatic leadership and an embedded culture and narrative, change and new directions are difficult. The Oversight Committee has dialogued continually with different members of the National Congress Office, shared in conversation with our Tassie Congress, numerous conversations with past moderators and the senior leadership team of the Synod. And as I look back through my notes and the record of those conversations and meetings, a similar theme and concept has been common throughout. Our report to you, which I hope you've all received finally, simplifies that concept, and we're pleased to bring this to you today. It is time. In a way, the space of the last 5 years has given time and rest, a chance to reflect on what we have valued and treasured of the past and realise and given space for what is to be, and allow the seasons to come and go. For everything there is a time and a purpose under heaven. So I simply want to draw your attention to our report, but specifically perhaps my comments in the report about the narrative of Narana's history. While Narana continues to be a great space to visit and provides ongoing employment for First Peoples and cultural education activities, it is no secret that since Uncle Vince was the driver of Narana as the primary activity of Congress Victoria, it has been difficult for us to recover from his retirement. This central identity of a key person is common in not-for-profits and social enterprises that have their genesis in a charismatic and energetic leader. Future UAICC members and First Peoples carry different visions in them, and the UAICC needs a freedom and fluidity to allow space for energy to move in new and different directions. And I hope that by providing you with some of the backstory to Narana's original conception in a more localised Geelong and District cooperative, members of Synod might be able to contextualise the Narana narrative more clearly, and that you will then understand the question that we have been raising over the last 5 years about the appropriateness of the UAICC Victoria and Synod owning, operating and providing a cultural centre and cultural education on the traditional lands of the Wadawurrung. But I want to acknowledge the wonderful support and partnership Narana and the Oversight Committee has experienced within Synod operations, from Sam and the staff of MRU, especially Malay, our finance partner, Emily as Director of Financial Services, Liz Sadler in People and Culture, and particularly Peter Thomas and the Property Service team. You've been an amazing support through turbulent times this past year. I also want to acknowledge my gratitude to Alison and the Congress Tassie mob and Mark Kickett and the Congress Executive who've trusted Rachel Kronberger and I with the oversight task that we've conducted these past 5 years, and whose wisdom, support and encouragement has been much valued and appreciated by this Gubba. Rachel and I anticipate that this may be our last report to Synod. So today we want to share with you in our report and verbally through Uncle Will new directions for Congress Victoria, and I'm excited that Reverend Will Pickett is able to be a significant lead in this renewed approach to Congress that we feel will nurture a vibrant and inclusive Congress Victoria community in the UCA. So I now hand over to Will.
Good afternoon, members of Synod, Moderator, General Secretary. It's been a while since I've been to Synod, and the question raised by our one who led the devotions this afternoon, the Bible study, asked the question, do you belong? Well, my family and I, we don't necessarily belong in Victoria, because we're not of Victorian Indigenous First Nations people. We are Noongar people, we are Willaman, we are Belia, we are Balladong, and we are Menang people of Western Australia. We are a proud people, and like so many of our Indigenous people, First Nations people here today, I want to pay my respects to those who are in the room. And thanks for Brooke for really encouraging devotion this morning's sermon. Really spoke to my heart and really made me proud of who I am. Even though I don't belong to Victoria, I know I belong to a people who are proud of where they come from. And they are very, very much alive with me everywhere I go. I often tell a story that when I left Western Australia, I went to my hometown, a little town where nobody knows. You guys probably don't know where it is until I tell you. It's just north of a place called Albany, not Albany, but Albany, Western Australia, just 35 to 40 k's north of a great place called the Stirling Ranges, where I grew up and where I wandered and hunted with my brothers and my family, and lived off the land. And when I went to come to Victoria, I made it my business to revisit the graves of my mother, my father, my grandparents, and to officially, in a sense, say goodbye, because I didn't know where I was going from that point on, or where God would lead me in ministry and take my family as the head of my family. And I remember that day when I went to that little town, I was spiritually led to go to a place where on the outskirts of town, like most of Western Australian little towns, Aboriginal people were relocated and put on a 5-acre block just outside of towns where they lived, out of mind, out of sight, where their community disregarded them. And so I grew up in that era. I grew up in my little town called Nowangarup, where there was segregation amongst the community, where myself and many others who played football for the local club would only be able to have comradeship on the football field, but after, when we went downtown to buy a shopping or we went to the local pub, we weren't allowed to go into that pub, and the segregation was white and black. All of those vivid memories are still alive within me. And so you would think, you would say, well, we don't blame you for not feeling belonging here in Victoria. We understand that, but I do understand this, that the referendum has changed my outlook of Australia tremendously. I grew up with racism. I grew up with prejudice. And just recently, I went to a Christian conference. I won't name where it was or the institution, but I sat down at a table with a Christian person who was has been with the church for a long time. And he said to me, he said, "What percentage of Aboriginality are you?" You look to be about 40%. So the fallout from the referendum is this: there's more to come, and there's a lot of negative stuff is yet to come from Australia, and Aboriginality, proof of Aboriginality is going to be one of those things. And friends, it's coming to your doorstep, because you know why? A lot of those people who are asking those questions live in the church that we belong to. So when I left my little hometown many years ago, over 15 to 16 years now, I went to the local place where we used to live. And our home was a makeshift, what we call a cornt, a makeshift home made of Hessian bags, sticks, and tin. And right close there, I got on my knees and I dug the dirt up, and I put a handful of it in a little plastic bag. And to that day, to right now, I still carry part of that dirt in this little sachet that I carry everywhere, so as to remember who I belong to and where I come from. The Congress has been part of that family. Unfortunately, the Congress journey, my Congress journey, hasn't always been positive, and some of you will know that. But I'm not here to talk about those negative things. What I'm talking about is the future. And like Australia, we have got a hard future to reckon with about Aboriginal people, First Nations people. But I want to acknowledge that we, the AIC in Victoria, is small in number, much like Tasmania. But the significance of the First Nations story and the church's capacity to listen and build relationship with First Nations person is crucial to who we are as a people of God. Second thing is that the AIC Congress's role in resourcing the Victorian presbyteries and the developing of relationships and ministry with local First Nations committee. Thirdly, our role in equipping the church in Victoria to be culturally aware and develop cultural intelligence in relationship with First Nations people. And number 4 is to continue to build commitment and partnership with the Congress Tasmania. Our desire, lastly, is to equip the church in Victoria through the locating of the Congress Victoria staff in relationship with ELM and the activities of the Synod, and our hopes for better outcomes through being supported through the Synod structures and mission and operations and units of the Synod. So I'm pretty excited about moving forward. Unfortunately, there's a bit of a dark shadow at the moment throughout Australia, and we're going to need you guys to step out in the light a bit more. Thank you.
We have some time for questions or comments. If you have any, could you please move to the microphones? On my left.
Moderator, my name's Avril Hannah-Jones. My pronouns are she, her, and I live on Wurundjeri land. Just asking, what will be the relationship between the UAICC working group and the School of Indigenous Studies at the University of Divinity?
At the moment, there won't be one because the hope is the working group will dissolve once we've actually set up our new little Congress Victoria, and then we'll institute a new regional committee. Then the role of the regional committee in Victoria would be to look at how we work within the structures of the Synod and the different aspects of the Synod in terms of working with ELM and the Indigenous College, the studies, the school at the College of Divinity, because the College of Divinity is not just related to Victoria, but I think Tassie as well. That would be something for the regional committees of Vic and Tas to discuss how we might participate in that ongoing resourcing. But I know already that we've got good relationship. Our congresses have good relationship with people like Glenn Lockery and others who've been part of that establishing of the School of Theology. So I can't answer the question other than to say it will be up to the regional committee to work that through because the working group's job will be completed.
And there's another question or comment coming.
It's not a question. Settle down, Greg. I just want to send love and thanks for how the steering group has really looked after Victoria Congress. But working with you, Uncle Will, even though we're across that Bass Strait, for Ayla, myself and Grace means that we belong a little bit more because we have each other. And the thanks for that I can't express on a microphone. But yeah, thank you. It's so glad to have you back, brother. Thank you.
And a question on my right.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, if you want to respond, yes.
No, I'll wait for that question.
Okay.
Robert Stringer from Yarra Valley Presbytery. I'm just wondering how, we've got a group of which a number are of the Uniting Church, and we meet in the Uniting Church where we've been building relationships with the Aboriginal community in our area. And it's been good to be able to do that because the Bengal Council, through our pressure, has put in place a full-time Aboriginal coordinator, and two, found a large pavilion where they can include the Aboriginal people can meet. It's called a Burrabun Beck, which means gathering place. And we have been privileged to have built relationships with the Aboriginal people in the Bengal Council area. I'm wondering how those sort of connections can be recognised as part of our church.
one of the things that we've become very aware of in Congress Vic is that while a lot of our focus for many years was working around around Narana and the reach that Narana had, a number of different groups, whether they be region, presbyteries, local congregations, were building connections with their local communities. And we're very mindful of that. And what would happen is congregations would ring up the Synod, or they'd ring up Narana and say, how can we do this? And they might get a little bit of support, or they might not, and then they'd end up doing it themselves. And a lot of people have learnt along the way. So our new strategy, in a sense, is because in Victoria, Congress Victoria, in a sense, if we think about it, has the responsibility of resourcing 7 presbytery regions. And with our limited staff, how do we do that? So we're looking at how we utilise the presbytery ministers who are Elm presbytery ministers, how we look at developing resourcing packages, etc., training and resourcing programs through Elm, through presbyteries in Victoria to help support that sort of connection that your group's been involved with, and to encourage that that continued work at local levels of congregations, agencies, schools, individuals, to learn how to make connections, culturally intelligent, culturally aware connections in your local area, so that it's not the Congress's work, but it's the church together that does that work. So that's what you've asked the question is what our hope is, and anticipation and aspiration is of this new direction for Congress Vic.
Thank you.
In haste, I forgot to give my apologies. My wife couldn't be here today, but she sends her apologies, and thinking about the Synod over the next few days. Her name is Carly Pickett, and I'm sure that you will get to know her in the future. She's a very formidable woman. She sort of reminded me of Alison a lot, so... Power to the Aboriginal women. Also, I'd like to acknowledge Duncan Taruva, who was a part of the Congress moving forward. Duncan, I believe, will be ordained in the next few weeks, so he's a Torres Strait Islander. It's been the first time that we've had a Torres Strait Islander person who's been a part of Congress. And as you know, the UAIC is the Uniting Aboriginal and Islander Christian Congress. So it's great to have Duncan come on board, and also Eva Orr. Some of you might know Eva as well. She's come on board recently. And I just want to acknowledge Greg Crow and Rachel Kronberger for all the work they've been putting into the Oversight Committee. I know that at times there have been very few of First Nations people upon that committee, and to be able to regulate and be able to steer that in the way that it should go according to what they think Aboriginal people might want to have better outcomes for is a task in itself. I mean, if I was to start thinking about things about Synod, I wouldn't have the foggiest clue about how to steer you guys ahead, because I don't have the language to be able to first move on to be able to teach you and guide you, but I do have skills that are different to yours. If any of you like to know how to read the country sometimes, maybe a footprint or something in the sand, I can do that for you, certainly. And if you don't know how to make a fire without matchsticks, well, you can come and see me too. So thank you, Greg, for all that, and thank you for receiving our report this afternoon. And I dare say that in the next 12 months or so, you're going to see a lot more of the both Congresses, Congress Victoria and Tasmania. Thank you.
Thank you for your report. And now I'm going to ask the ex-moderator to come and take the chair, and Alison and I are going to bring the Walking Together in Covenant Committee report.
Thank you, Moderator. I don't really need to introduce you, I don't think. David Fotheringham, Moderator, and Alison Overeem, Manager of UAICC La Prena, are going to be bringing a report from the Walking Together in Covenant Committee. It's report G1. I'll hand over to you. David and Alison.
Thank you, Moderator. David Fotheringham, Moderator. You have our reports, the video report and the written report, and you've just heard the Congress reports. It's been a big year. We actually want to give you, in fact, the last comments that we had just now actually lead really well into this conversation, because we actually want to ask you to have, or we want to invite you to have a table group conversation so that we can learn together about some of the positive things and some of the challenges being faced in the Walking Together space. So there are postcards on your tables, and you're invited to write some stories or do some storytelling together and write some notes about those stories on the postcards on the table. And if you have any other messages for the Walking Together in Covenant Committee, you can certainly do that. Now, we're running short of time, so you'll get just a couple of minutes to start a conversation, but can I invite you to continue some of that conversation into our afternoon tea break. When we break for afternoon tea, if you've got some more stories to share and to write, then please make the time to do that. Just before I invite you to move to table groups, yes, Alison's going to say a couple of comments.
Of course I am. I just want to say it's been an honour and privilege to co-chair the Walking Together in Covenant Committee for the VicTas Synod, and acknowledge, I just want to pay respects and acknowledge Jill Rusbaki, some of you may know her, and Dr. Reverend Jenny Byrne, who have been in this space for so long that this has come to fruition. And I'd also like to acknowledge past moderators that we've worked with in the Walking Together space and our current moderator. But I'd also like to acknowledge and pay respects to the Synod of VicTas, who has supported the continued work of the Walking Together in Covenant Committee and the Walking Together in Covenant. There is true hope in the shared stories and the pathway for shared action, and I congratulate our Synod for being committed to this ongoing work. Thank you.
So, Moderator, I would like to invite people to start a conversation now, and if it's all right with you, I will conclude that time in a moment.
That sounds like an excellent idea. Thank you, Moderator.
Table group discussion. The question should be on the screen. I think we've got the question from the screen. So, in case you weren't clear about the question, and I'm not even sure if I can't now remember whether I even told you the question, what stories and learnings can you share from your efforts to walk together as first and second peoples in covenant? What stories and learnings can you share from your efforts to walk together as first and second peoples in covenant? Thank you. And we'll collect them at the end of afternoon tea break. So we're going to be going to the afternoon tea break shortly. We were aiming to collect them at the beginning, but I want to give you some more time. So if by the end of the afternoon tea break you could bring them forward, that would be great. Thank you.
And this means you're going to have to keep on having those conversations during your afternoon tea break. Start talking.
20 seconds left. Members of Synod, I'd ask for your attention again. I've resumed the chair. I'm very pleased to know that some of these conversations had actually already started earlier on today in table groups, and I want to encourage you to continue the conversations and certainly continue the conversations over afternoon tea as much as you are able. We'll have a couple of announcements about afternoon tea, and then I want to offer a prayer before we break, and we will make our time to come back will become 4:05. Business convener.
Thank you, Moderator. Members of Synod are reminded that afternoon tea and morning tea is available each day, both in the White Horse Room over here and the lower hall, so spread out. And don't forget to make use of the coffee cart in the foyer, which is also a great opportunity to catch up or meet a new friend or perhaps recruit a standing committee nominee. Speaking of which, there's now a doc on the resources page of the app that will take you straight to the nominations webpage. November weather is new to us in this space. Usually we meet here in June or July, and we're still waiting for the heaters to kick in at this time. But if you're feeling a bit warm, and the handy dandy voting cards are the perfect size for a fan, but it's a real monitorial skill to scan a room of 250 people and work out who's responding to what and who'd like to ask a question. So can you use a white piece of paper for the fanning so that to give the moderator the best shot at reading the room? That would be great. A reminder that rolls will close at 4 p.m. tomorrow, immediately after afternoon tea. Working group leaders need to meet at the front of the stage as soon as this session finishes for a short briefing. And working group scribes, please check your emails for information about your role and accessing Wi-Fi in the space where your working group will be meeting. Moderator, back to you.
Thank you. Before we break for afternoon tea, I want to acknowledge that members of the Samoan community and certainly some of the Samoan members amongst us here, this is a very difficult time following the deaths of 4 young seasonal workers just recently near Mansfield. And so I want us to pause for a moment to pray for the families of those involved, David, Alessana, Aparamo and Derek, to pray for their families and for the whole community. Can we pause in prayer? Let's pray. Gracious God, hear the grief that we share. Bring your love, your compassion, and your support around all those who mourn and grieve. God, in your mercy, hear our prayer. In Jesus' name, Amen. Thank you. We will break for afternoon tea and return at 4:05. Thank you.